It's special being here, isn't it? All of us coming together at this conference to explore the ancient wisdom of psychedelics, watching, participating as we see it's found its way in both healing communities and mainstream medicine. I'm curious, everybody in the room here, how many clinicians do we have? Raise your hand if you're a doctor, PA, NP, therapist, medical student, shout out. Thank you for your work. How about facilitators? Psychedelic integration guides, life coaches. Cheers, good to see you. And where are my psychonauts at? Right? Embarking on the final frontier of medicine, our psyche, the inner space. It seems that we've been going down this path for a while, and today I stand before you not just as a psychiatrist, but as a fellow traveler of this remarkable journey of the human experience. Isn't that why we're all here? To find answers to these age-long humanistic questions. Where did this life come from? What's the meaning and purpose we assign to our life and the world around us? Why are we here? What happens after we pass? These are what my patients wonder subconsciously all the time, and it isn't until we do the work that it comes to the conscious mind. Who am I? What makes me me? Why do I think the way I think? Why do I behave the way I behave? And what governs my decision-making? It's this journey in mental health that I see every day as I do my clinical work. And, they say, you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I truly love this work, helping people expand their mind, work through the emotional clutter and find their truer self, find harmony and balance, and answer these questions. Why am I here? Who am I? Do you ask yourself these questions? Yeah, me too. Raise your hand if you seek the medicine to find answers. Yeah, me too. And my kind of approach on this has been a little bit jaded through my psychiatric career. I think it's safe to say psychiatry has had a difficult reputation. And it's been the healing industry that I'm a part of. But if we look back at the last century of psychiatry, it's not a lot to pat our back for. Even the etymology of the word, if you break it down, the term is derived from the Greek word psyche, meaning the mind or the soul, right? And iatria, meaning healing or medical treatment. My cardiologist friends, they treat the heart. My neurologist friends, they treat the brain. My nephrologist friends, they treat the kidneys. But us psychiatrists, we're supposed to treat the soul? We're supposed to heal the mind? My job every day is to find a medical treatment for the conflicted soul. It's no wonder we're perceived as psychiatrists, we're perceived as quacks, right? What is the soul? What is this pursuit? Scientifically, we're supposed to objectively help people, when this is really just such a mercurial, subjective experience. And so, as we move from this understanding that this isn't objective science. My favorite thing in psychiatry is to just say to any question, I don't know. And nobody does. The brain is such a mystery. They say that it takes more computing power than we have in the world to maybe eventually map one human brain. And so it's almost as if our psychiatric industry set itself up for failure. Almost. Weekends like this remind us that there are new, innovative techniques to help our patients, to help ourselves. That this isn't a disease state model we need to continue, but rather a self-expansion model. And it's weekends like this where all of my practitioners in the room, I'm sure you feel not only the fulfillment, but the excitement and what you can add to the work and how you can be there for the world. If we look back, though, at the history of psychiatry, let's have a little bit of fun. The medical treatment for the soul. If you look historically to ancient times, the mind and the soul was not separated. It was thought of as one and the same, the being of our essence, the reason we act and behave the way we do. If we were going through mental disturbances in ancient times, we would start to treat the spirit. We would nourish the soul. We would come together in community. We would share love. We would go to nature. We would practice this healing that was brought down. We would go to our elders for guidance. If If you fast forward to the medieval times and the Renaissance, this concept of exploring our mental wellness, understanding the soul, took a much more religious connotation. If you were going through mental difficulties at that time, you would be sent to prayer. We would call on our spiritual leaders. In extreme cases, we would go to exorcists. Fast forward to the Age of Enlightenment, and all of a sudden, this journey, this pursuit of understanding self, took a more scientific approach. We looked at biological factors. We looked at all the clinical symptomology and tried to understand ourselves physically. New medicines that might be brought to market, we had clinical trials and research, and we needed this nomenclature, which somewhat makes sense in our physical health, but in mental health, there's not a lot of sense there in a field that is so subjective, and we can't assign these objective criteria. So we were left with some very unique strategies in the early 1900s. We would electrocute people. ECT in those days had a lot of disastrous effects. It's not what ECT is today. In 1949, we had the lobotomy. The Portuguese doctor who invented the lobotomy won a Nobel Prize. In 1950, we had the first antipsychotic, Thorazine. And if you think about where the community was at that time, if you suffered from psychosis or hysteria, you were thrown into an insane asylum. You were strapped up to the wall. You were put in a rubber room. The standard of care was so poor. This is where psychiatry originates. It wasn't until 1952 that, if you know the story about the serotonin hypothesis, it was found as a side effect of a medication, isoniazid. It's a tuberculosis med. They found that some people who were taking isoniazid felt more cheerful, more upbeat, they were chipper. And in 1952, we drew the conclusion that happiness must be associated with serotonin. 70 years later, we still follow this same principle. If you look at the evolution since then, the 60s were the last time we were actually still doing lobotomies. We were carving away pieces of the frontal lobe, etching through the eye socket. In 1973, we finally took homosexuality out of the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual, that gives us those clusters of symptoms in which we now assign labels to everybody. 7 years later, they added it back as ego-dystonic homosexuality. This is the industry that I'm a part of. And in the 80s, Prozac became popular. And it shifted our whole perspective of care to just take a pill and forget about your problems. Here's that happy pill, and the pharmaceutical marketing around that took off. And that's really what gave birth to modern psychopharmacology. Now, here I am as a resident, 2014. And I'm being thrown into the psych hospital. They gave me my medication toolbox and said, help these people who are suicidal, homicidal, psychotic, manic. Throw these meds at them. They taught me to watch out for my own liability. Don't let someone leave the hospital if they might hurt someone else or hurt themselves. They taught me to keep people as long as the insurance will pay. They didn't teach me love. They didn't teach me compassion. They didn't teach me how to meet these patients where they were. And I became jaded in my residency. I almost got kicked out. I was quite rebellious. In my second year, they put me in the VA hospital, a community that needs a lot of healing. I felt very ill-equipped at the time, but connecting and trying to help people, understanding that the bureaucracy and the culture, those who dedicated their lives to serving and protecting us, were promised that there would be good care for them. But when you see mental health care in the VA hospital, it's sad. People are statistics. We lump everybody into categories of drug users. We're not really finding that compassion. It was my third year in residency where we started to learn more psychotherapy. And in the outpatient setting, this really was where I found my joy. Because in my fourth year, I had a great program director called, his name was Dr. Gregory Brown, and he brought energy medicine to our education. He showed us videos about people who were actually doing operations, surgeries, but instead of being under anesthesia, they were under hypnosis. He showed us monks who would manipulate their own vital signs, stick needles through their muscles and control the bleeding, control their respiration rate, control their blood pressure and heart rate. It really taught us that there was something profoundly enigmatic in our industry, that we don't quite understand the full science of mental health, of the brain, of the emotional and mental well-being, but we shouldn't overlook that, and we shouldn't neglect what we don't know, but instead we should try to integrate it. And so I started my career and I started treating patients and feeling more confident in these holistic strategies, bringing all of it together: psychotherapy, medicine, lifestyle modification. I remember my first year in practice. I was finally making adult money. I felt good about myself, and I wanted to take my extended family on a vacation. We went to Hawaii. I remember this morning vividly. I woke up and checked my emails, and I got a letter from a patient. It said, "Dear Dr. Zand, if you're reading this email, I took my life 5 days ago on a beach in California." He went on to thank me for my work, to say last time we spoke, I lied to you and said I wasn't suicidal. I didn't want to burden you. I was going through so much pain, and I already made my decision. He was trying to comfort me, but those words couldn't distract me from the turmoil that I felt. How could I lose somebody? I met with him 4 or 5 times. I tried everything I knew to do for him. I've kept that letter in my desk, and I read it often to remind me the gravity of the work in which we do. We're not just here helping people work through anxious feelings or depressive feelings. We're saving lives through this work. And I continue to honor and remember that patient by applying myself as much as possible and learning every new technique there is out there. And in 2019, a new modality was offered. Spravato. The drug reps came knocking on my clinic door, and I said, "Tell me about it." Actually, rewind a year before, 2018, a patient came to me and said, "I left my last psychiatrist." I said, "Why?" He said, "He kept trying to give me ketamine." And I thought, well, that sounds reckless. Should we report this doctor to the medical board? I didn't know much about ketamine at the time, but in 2019, when S-ketamine became FDA approved for depression, we started using it in the office. Why not? Let's give it a try. Hey, take this nasal spray, shove it up your nose, I'll see you in 2 hours and see how it goes. Very early in the learning. But initially, we were just seeing such a difference. And it wasn't just that the patient would come out of session feeling melted. You can see it in their affect. They were less overwhelmed, less stressed. But it changed the paradigm in which we treat. I was used to giving people a pill every day, almost as bait, so they have to come back and see me so we can really do the good therapy work. But now we switched to a more experiential model, and our patients were coached to become their own therapist. And we started to learn, as we are in this industry, that it takes much, much more than just the medicine, the somatic healing, the breath work, the intention setting, the journaling. In our offices, we prep all of our patients to do this, and now we've extended the work, as you've seen, to the home, to the clinic, to the integration group, to the immersive retreat center. And all of these modalities combined are now teaching us more than I learned in residency. Psychedelic medicine has taught me more about how to treat my patients than any textbook ever could. Thank you. And it's just this, that we need to move away from this disease state model in mental health. We need to stop telling people there's something wrong with them. Every time a patient used to come in to see me, I would ask all of these negative questions. Are you feeling guilt? Are you low energy? Do you have anxious thoughts? Are you panicky? Could we shift that and start asking what's going right in their life? There's no ICD diagnosis for someone who's thriving and doing well. And so we weren't taught to ask questions in that direction, but we've flipped the model now. And rather than telling everybody what their diagnosis is and giving them a label, we open up a blank canvas for self-exploration, for exploration of who we are, why we are, and then realizing that we are not singular in this journey. We are all connected in a community together. And the less singular we view our life, the more happiness and joy we find. This has led to the path of self-exploration and self-actualization, to find healing, inner healing, to find growth, to connect with self-love, and then to transcend all of that and connect with something bigger than self. This is the curriculum that I now teach at the residency program that I almost got kicked out of. And so I teach psychedelic medicine and psychedelic therapy to residents, therapists, PAs, NPs, medical students. And I'm so excited about the future of mental health because these professionals now are coming out excited rather than jaded. And so I want to go over the outline briefly of what we teach our therapists and our medical professionals. And it's a 4-step process. It starts with the first step of self-healing, Because if you're going through things, trauma, fear-based thought patterns, abuse, neglect, and this is compounded over life, and now we're going to sit together and do some talk therapy, but your body is tense. You're feeling that fight or flight. Rather than trying to rewire these thought patterns and unearth new perspectives, we're really just reinforcing traumatic pathways. We have to heal the body first and open up the possibility to then expand the mind. So that self-healing starts with the breath work and progressive muscle relaxation and detoxifying the body and paying attention to our sleep and our activity and our nutrition and all the things that I got about 2 hours of education in 4 years of med school. And so once we've found a little bit of healing and that platform, that canvas is now ready to paint a picture, we can now focus on the growth mindset. And self-growth becomes the next step in our path, where we look at more traditional cognitive behavioral approaches. Right? Change the way you feel. In order to change the way you feel, you must change the way you think, change the way you behave. We look at self-help modalities. We help people map out their life and understand where their false fixed beliefs and cognitive distortions have come from. And after we go through that step of self-growth, which is highly augmented by these psychedelic medicines, then we get into self-love, which for my veterans, for my trauma survivors, it's one of the most difficult concepts to wrap their head around. Self-love. Why wouldn't I love myself? There's only one of me. I have this heart beating in my chest 10,000 times a day, and I don't even ask it to, and I don't even know how it started beating. And the relationship with the world begins with the relationship with ourselves. So to find self-love, then you project love into the world. If you hate yourself, then subconsciously you're hating everything around you. And so that self-love becomes such a key component, and I cannot wait until we can unleash legal MDMA-assisted therapy to open up the heart. We have so much ahead of us, thank you. We have so much ahead of us, but even right now, using ketamine legally, in decriminalized areas and therapeutic regions using psilocybin, we are healing the body, we're growing the mind, we're opening the heart, and when we've gone through those stages and we've done some inner child work and some shadow work and some psychodynamic reflection of those things that happened to us when we were little that meant the world to us because we were 5 or 6 years old, and now we follow the same childhood emotional patterns. Once we go through that work and we've healed and we've grown and we've found our love, the next step is self-transcendence, to focus on something bigger than self, to realize that our journey is much, much more than our limited, rigid beliefs might tell us. And isn't that something that psychedelic medicine really opens up for us? Where we start to connect on maybe a higher source, maybe we clean up some of the conflicts we've grown up with, religiously or spiritually. Perhaps we're able to engage in community, find peace in nature, find peace in giving, altruism. This is part of the work we do. All of our patients are given opportunities to volunteer, not just to give back to the world, but to give back to themselves, to build their confidence and understand that they have so much to offer. And when they do that, then they can really find their peace. And this transcendence has brought us to community outreach, where we do group ketamine sessions, and we've seen so many of these retreats. Right now we're doing pop-ups, where you see your clinician online, you get your programming, your medicine, your therapeutic guidelines, and then you go to a place that's just filled with love, filled with camaraderie. We do group therapy. My journey has taken me from the clinic, from the hospital, to the jungle. I live now in an immersive psychedelic retreat center on the river in Puerto Rico. We bring our patients out to do all of the immersive healing, wake up, river plunge, meditation, breath work, yoga, group therapy, ketamine session, and then afterwards, decompress in nature. Let's go on a hike. Let's go to see the waterfall. We have nutritional detox. We have digital detox. All of these things are so necessary, and nobody has to come to the island to seek the care. We can replicate that for everybody, but we have to start focusing on this kind of a platform where it's not just medicine or therapy. There are so many other things that we can do together. And we've seen this shift in psychiatry in, really, in my opinion, just 4 years. It's been a really, really tough time. I always introduce myself as a psychiatrist and then piggyback that with, but don't worry, I'm a little anti-psychiatry. Because many times people have that experience. They went and they saw their doctor for 5 minutes, didn't look them in the eyes, wrote them a script and said, I'll see you in a month. They said, take this antidepressant, you might get better in 2-3 months. And the patient says, I'm suicidal today. And you want me to wait 2-3 months? But now we have all of these modalities that can meet the patients where they are and guide them on this journey. And I'm excited about the future. I'm excited that psychiatry is evolving. It's no longer a dirty word. But merging psychedelic therapy with the holistic psychiatric approach, we can really impact change. And we've came a long way from lobotomies, right? We've really found a healing modality that most psychiatrists still don't know about. And so my crusade is to continue to educate, and I commend all of you for coming to these conferences and learning and engaging, and really understanding that the way in which we grew up learning about our mental health, that's not the way in which we need to continue practicing. It's as if we took this journey over centuries through scientific exploration just to arrive back on the doorstep of our past, learning from the ancient wisdom that there is a profound connection between mind, body, and spirit. And even if medicine tells us otherwise, Western medicine says, stick to the research, stick to the clinical trials, stick to the objective data. We understand there's something much more profound, and like our ancestors who went to natural elements and deep introspection to find their healing, we're bringing that to the clinic, to the home. And really rediscovering what it means to heal the soul. So we're now in this place where psychiatry doesn't seem archaic. It seems timeless, deconstructing the rigid patterns of our mind and really bringing us closer to this dance between ancient wisdom and modern medicine, allowing us to realize that there is a deeper understanding we are all after that connects us so that we can really find the essence of humanity. And so I urge all of us to step forward and share with the world that we all have a mental health journey. It does not mean you're sick. It does not mean you're ill. We should not be talking about mental illness, but instead be talking about mental wellness. And in my journey, I have psychedelic medicine to thank me for the work that I've done personally, professionally, and educationally. And I thank you all for being a part of this journey with me. Appreciate your time. Thank you. And with some time left, I'm happy to take some questions from the perspective of a psychiatrist, a psychedelic healer, immersive retreat centers, at-home ketamine. Ask away if you have any thoughts or questions. Yes, please. Yeah, the question is, do we take patients from Puerto Rico at the retreat center? And yes, we came out to the island to say, if you are familiar with the Hispanic culture and the way they approach mental health, it's not talked about very openly. And so we're trying to trick them. We're bringing Spravato to the island and these new modalities to shift that landscape of their mind. And then we bring people from the States as well. So far we've done, if you saw the ketamine task force out here today, we did a free veteran retreat for them. We've done retreats for mental health professionals, corporate wellness, and just the everyday person who wants to come in and engage in that work. Thank you for the question. Yes? Yeah, it's a great question, and it comes up very, very commonly. The question was, for patients who are already on SSRIs and want to engage in this work in psychedelic medicine, how do we advise them? And so there's so many variables there. We first have to understand, is the medication helping them? We know that traditionally antidepressants help about 1/3 of people. They cause side effects in about 1/3 of people, and the other 1/3 just kind of feel somewhere in the middle, numb, kind of dulled down. So if they're actually getting support from the medicine, then we want to pair that with a psychedelic med that is okay to take with an SSRI, and ketamine is just that. S-ketamine and ketamine is actually, Spravato is indicated to be taken with your antidepressant. So there is no conflict, and some theorize that it actually enhances the benefit. For those who are maybe doing psilocybin, we know that there's this serotonin burst, right? And I don't practice medically, legally with psilocybin, but I do help kind of counsel people and guide them. And usually, if it's not working and they've come to psychedelics because their antidepressant hasn't worked, we do a slow taper. Unfortunately, what we're seeing in society is that a lot of these antidepressants, if you've been on it for years, decades, it's going to take months or years to come off safely. And so everybody's different, but those are the main approaches that we would pursue. Thank you for the question. Yes? Personally or professionally? The question was, what's my favorite psychedelic? Sure. I'm very open about my work with ketamine. I think it's helped me tremendously. I think being that voice that I go through mental health stuff as well, just because I'm a psychiatrist doesn't mean I'm, exempt. So I really enjoy the personal growth and the ability to check in with myself that ketamine has provided for me. I think that it is really a gentle introduction to psychedelic therapy. A lot of my patients are scared about this, right? All of us here are really excited about this work, but the majority of my patients, they've heard the concerns, they've seen the movies, the bad trip, the airline pilot who they claim did something or something. And so we bridge them with a low-dose ketamine to introduce what it feels like. Now, I cannot wait for MDMA because I think it's going to be a game changer for sexual trauma, for relationship distress, for family dynamics that need a little bit of soothing. I'm very excited to see how psilocybin is incorporated. A lot of our partners out here are trying to decrease the half-life so that the therapist or the facilitator doesn't have to be with the patient for 5-6 hours. And I think that can really inspire creativity for someone who's in a stagnant, depressed state of mind. I'm excited for all of the future of these medications, LSD and the DMT derivatives and what they could do for brain health, but I'm a huge, huge fan of ketamine personally and professionally. Thank you for the question. Yes?
Last question, by the way. This will be the last one.
Thank you, Shane. Sure. Yeah, so if I'm sorry you're in the back, but I heard, how can we follow the footsteps of ketamine with MDMA and really make this a mainstream modality that doesn't have to be done undercover or through government-sanctioned clinical trial? Unfortunately, I think the answer, and actually let me rephrase that, not unfortunately, fortunately, the answer lies in Big Pharma. And that might have sounded a little bit off-putting, but while Big Pharma, and there's a lot of microphones in here, I should probably be cautious with what I'm saying. While Big Pharma was seen by some as kind of the villain in the 90s and the 2000s and taking advantage of some of these clinical trials and studies, I really think that if you follow the healing and we're making change and people are actually getting better, then Big Pharma is going to approach that. And so is MDMA going to be bought by a J&J? Right, and then are we going to push for FDA approval and then come to offices like a therapist or psychiatrist's office where you can do that work together? That's where I see it going, fortunately or unfortunately. But I'm really excited about the future, and I thank you all for your attention. Appreciate you, Shane. Thank you.